Just 4 years ago, America's outboard engine industry was riding a record-breaking boom. Now, brand new Mercury, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Honda outboards, once worth tens of thousands, are being dumped for pennies in a desperate nationwide fire sale. Over 2 million engines suddenly hit the market, prices collapsing by up to 30%, and legendary dealerships filing for bankruptcy overnight. How did an industry built on the American dream collapse so fast, and who knew the fuse was burning all along? In the decades after World War II, outboard engines became more than just mechanical tools. They represented a new kind of American freedom. Families loaded up their station wagons, hitched tin boats to the bumper, and set out for weekends on the water. Magazine ads from the 1950s and the 1960s promised independence and adventure, with Mercury, Johnson, and Evinrude outboards painted as the ticket to a better life. Boating was affordable, engines were simple, and the idea of fixing your own motor in the garage was part of the appeal. A marine historian recalls how these engines, once symbols of post-war optimism, were woven into the fabric of American life. For many, the outboard was a rite of passage, a first taste of self-reliance, a way for working families to claim a piece of the outdoors. The water was open to anyone who could scrape together a few $100s and a little know-how. But the dream was never immune to change. By the 1970s, new federal regulations forced manufacturers to rethink the very heart of the outboard. The Environmental Protection Agency's emission standards demanded cleaner burning engines, pushing the industry into a race for innovation. Evinrude's fixed direct injection system, unveiled in the late 1990s, was supposed to be a leap forward, a cleaner, smarter engine for a new era. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. Plagued by reliability problems and massive recalls, the fixed debacle cost the company millions and shook consumer trust. While American brands struggled to adapt, Japanese manufacturers saw an opening. Yamaha, Suzuki, and Honda arrived with 4-stroke engines that were quieter, cleaner, and most importantly, dependable. Their reputation for precision and reliability quickly won over boaters frustrated by recalls and breakdowns. The old guard was forced to reckon with a new reality. The outboard market was no longer an American stronghold. By the early 2000s, the industry had remade itself again. Digital controls, touchscreen displays, and luxury branding transformed the outboard from a tool into a status symbol. Prices climbed, complexity multiplied, and the gap between the boating dream and everyday reality began to widen. Still, the stories lingered, of fathers and sons rebuilding carburetors on a Saturday, of families launching battered aluminum boats into dawn-lit lakes. The historian's voice lingers on the sense of loss. What began as a symbol of freedom and possibility was now tangled in technology and cost. The promise that anyone could own the water had faded, replaced by a sense of nostalgia for something simpler, something now just out of reach. The groundwork for overconfidence was laid long before the crash, as the industry's pursuit of progress quietly eroded the very foundation that made boating an American tradition. In 2021, a surge of optimism swept through the marine industry. Dealers across the country placed orders at a record pace, convinced that the pandemic-fueled boom in boating would never slow down. The numbers were staggering. Some dealerships doubled or even tripled their engine orders, betting on a future where every outboard would find a buyer. Manufacturers ramped up production lines, and warehouses filled with shiny new engines, each one financed on borrowed money. Beneath the surface, a quiet mechanism powered this expansion: floor plan financing. Dealers relied on these credit lines to stock their showrooms, paying only the interest until each engine sold. For years, this system seemed bulletproof. Interest rates hovered around 4%, and the cost of carrying inventory felt manageable, even trivial. A dealer with $5 million in inventory might owe less than $17,000 a month in interest, a cost easily absorbed as long as sales remained strong. but the foundation was fragile. In early 2022, the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates at a pace not seen in decades. By late 2024, rates on floor plan loans had soared past 13%. That same $5 million in inventory now demanded more than $54,000 a month just to service the interest. For larger dealers, the monthly burden climbed into six figures. Suddenly, every unsold engine transformed from a potential profit into a mounting liability. A marine economist breaks down the math. Dealers were not just selling engines, they were racing the clock. Every month an engine sat unsold, the cost compounded. When demand cooled, the debt did not wait. It grew. At the height of the frenzy, manufacturers pushed aggressive production targets, emboldened by easy credit and a belief that the good times would last. Internal strategy documents from Brunswick and Mercury reveal executives championing output increases to preserve market share, even as warning signs flickered in the background. Dealers, flush with inventory and buoyed by memories of 2021's record sales, ignored the risks. The result was a warehouse glut, financed on terms that grew more dangerous with every rate hike. By mid-2024, the industry total floor plan exposure topped $5 billion. Trade association reports warned of rising delinquency rates, but the alarm came too late. Lenders responded with stricter curtailments, demanding faster repayment for aging inventory. Dealers who once relied on flexible terms now faced hard deadlines and shrinking credit lines. For many, the math no longer worked. Engines that once represented opportunity became ticking debt bombs, waiting to explode with the next missed payment. The sense of confidence that fueled the outboard boom had quietly given way to leveraged exposure. The industry was no longer riding a wave. It was balanced on a knife's edge, with every interest rate hike tightening the grip. The time bomb was set. All it needed was a spark. Tommy's Boats, one of the country's largest independent marine dealerships, became the first high-profile casualty when the market's foundation gave way. In February 2025, court filings revealed $115 million in claims from creditors, a sum tied almost entirely to floor plan loans that once seemed routine. The company had built its empire on bulk orders and easy credit, stacking warehouses with engines and boats financed at single-digit rates. But by late 2024, those same loans demanded interest payments that dwarfed monthly sales. When the next curtailment deadline hit, cash reserves ran dry. Lenders responded with a formal notice of default. Tommy's access to new credit was frozen overnight. Receivers moved in, tallying everything from shrink-wrapped outboards to unsold pontoons. The valuation documented in bankruptcy dockets painted a stark picture. Tens of millions in inventory, but nowhere near enough to satisfy the debt. Engines once valued at retail now sat on the books at liquidation estimates, their worth slashed by forced sale math. Within weeks, the receivership process triggered a cascade. Auction notices went out to regional liquidators, and the first lots, hundreds of late-model Mercury, Yamaha, and Suzuki engines, were listed with no reserve. The public auctions drew crowds of speculators, wholesalers, and export buyers, all eager to snap up hardware at prices that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. The clearance rate topped 90%, but the recovery for creditors fell far short of the outstanding balance. Each sale reset the market's expectations, dragging resale values down nationwide. The collapse of Tommy's Boats sent a chill through the industry. Creditors, now on alert, began scrutinizing the balance sheets of every large dealer with aging inventory. The fear was simple. If a giant could fall so quickly, no one was safe. As more dealers missed payments and lenders tightened terms, the liquidation cycle accelerated, pushing even more engines onto an already flooded market. Tommy's bankruptcy was not just a business failure, it was the first domino, toppling the old order and setting off a chain reaction that would define the year. By the spring of 2025, auction houses across America were overwhelmed. Liquidators listed outboard engines by the thousands, rows of Mercury, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Honda units, most less than 2 years old, some still wrapped in factory plastic. More than 2 million engines flooded the secondary market in a matter of months. The numbers dwarfed anything the industry had seen before. Auctioneers dropped reserve prices, often abandoning them entirely, just to keep the inventory moving. In Texas, a single bankruptcy sale cleared 110 engines in one day. Gulf Coast receiverships pushed out lots of 150 at a time, with clearance rates above 90%. The impact was immediate and brutal. Price indices for late-model outboards collapsed by as much as 30% compared to their pandemic peak. A 150-horsepower engine that fetched $24,000 in 2023 now struggled to clear $16,000. At every major auction, Ritchie Bros, Proxibid, and GovPlanet, dealers, flippers, and exporters crowded the bidding, all chasing the same promise of a bargain. But the bargains only multiplied. Each new batch of engines set a lower price floor, forcing private sellers and remaining dealerships to slash their own listings just to compete. Online marketplaces reflected the chaos. Boat Trader and Craigslist saw used engine listings double in under 6 months, with prices converging on the latest auction lows. Facebook Marketplace filled with offers for like-new outboards at prices that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. The feedback loop was relentless. Every liquidation event triggered a fresh round of markdowns nationwide. The scale of the glut rewrote the rules for everyone involved. Dealers with inventory left unsold watched their assets depreciate overnight. Buyers, sensing the downward spiral, held back, waiting for deeper discounts. Exporters moved fast to absorb bulk lots, shipping containers of discounted engines to Latin America, Africa, and Eastern Europe. The American resale market had become a race to the bottom, with each transaction dragging values further down. The auction flood did not just clear warehouses, it reset what outboards were worth everywhere. At a small dealership in northern Indiana, the numbers on the ledger no longer add up. The owner, a third-generation marine dealer, walks the empty aisles between rows of unsold outboards, each one once a symbol of security, now a source of mounting anxiety. Just 2 years ago, the same engines would have flown off the lot by Memorial Day. Now, with interest rates over 13%, the cost to keep them in stock has tripled. For $3 million in inventory, the monthly interest alone can top $32,000, a figure that dwarfs the store's entire gross margin. Every unsold engine is a dead anchor, pulling the business under with each passing month. James and Sarah, a couple from rural Ohio, remember when boating was a promise of escape. In 2021, they financed a 300-horsepower Mercury, convinced they had made a smart investment. The loan, stretched over 7 years, seemed manageable with both of them working. By 2025, the engine's resale value had fallen below what they still owed. The market is so flooded that even like-new outboards are being listed for less than half their original price. Trading in or selling is not an option. No dealer wants to take on more inventory, and private buyers only offer what the auctions have set as the new floor. Their monthly payments continue, but the sense of freedom that once came with their boat has been replaced by regret and resentment. Dealers across the Midwest face similar nightmares. Floor plan statements arrive with interest charges that have doubled or tripled since 2022. Invoices pile up, and lenders call more frequently, warning of curtailment deadlines. Some dealers have started shutting their doors mid-season, leaving behind showrooms full of shrink-wrapped engines and unpaid bills. For families like James and Sarah, the collapse is not just about lost equity. It is about a dream that has turned into another bill they cannot escape. The cascading effect is visible in communities built around the water. where empty marinas and silent boat launches stand as reminders of how quickly optimism can sink into debt. The fallout is personal, measured in lost businesses, strained households, and the slow unraveling of a tradition that once defined summer across America's heartland. Mercury, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Honda, pillars of the American outboard industry, now find themselves exposed by the very systems they built. Mercury's vast United States plants, once symbols of industrial might, now echo with uncertainty. Fixed costs mount as unsold engines fill warehouses, and the drive to keep production running clashes with a market in retreat. In early 2024, Brunswick, Mercury's parent, reported a 23% plunge in outboard sales, erasing $140 million in revenue. But the numbers only hint at the scale of the problem. Dealers and buyers have grown wary of digital controls and proprietary rigging that are now standard. The price of a 150 horsepower engine, once $12,000, has soared to $25,000 or even $35,000. Software locks and forced upgrades have turned what was once mechanical simplicity into a tangle of restrictions, leaving many owners feeling trapped and priced out. Yamaha, long trusted for reliability, faces a different storm. The collapse of North American and European demand has left its United States division exposed. High horsepower models cannot offset the glut of discounted inventory. Supply chain delays and rising costs deepen the backlog, while dealers struggle with late deliveries and mounting debt. Internal reports from Japan now question whether Yamaha should double down, pivot to electrification, or retreat from the United States market entirely. Electrification is on the table, and the choices are stark. Suzuki's troubles stem from its smaller dealer network. As sales dry up, more outlets close, making Suzuki engines harder to find and support. Warranty worries and fading confidence ripple outward, especially in rural and coastal areas where dealer attrition hits hardest. In early 2024, Suzuki's North American sales dropped 15%, outpacing global declines and signaling acute risk if the downturn lingers. Honda, meanwhile, drifts further from relevance. Once a dependable alternative, its outboards now struggle to stand out. Innovation has stalled, and the engines are often described as generic, reliable but unremarkable. As liquidation auctions accelerate, Honda outboards are among the first to be bundled and sold at steep discounts, their value dictated by urgency rather than loyalty. Industry speculation hints at a possible withdrawal from the United States marine market, treating the division as expendable in a time of corporate triage. Liquidation is reshaping brand strategy. Across the industry, innovation fatigue is setting in. Owners complain about software-locked features, costly repairs, and the sense that every advance brings another hidden cost. The doubling and tripling of outboard prices since 2019 has left even the most loyal questioning whether the water is still worth the price. Today, over 2 million nearly new outboards sit in limbo, evidence of an industry outpaced by its own ambitions. As liquidation continues, every fire sale resets expectations for what these machines are truly worth. The shock isn't just economic, it's cultural. In a market built on dreams of open water, even the tide of progress can turn overnight.